Supportive nutrition. Everybody makes a big mistake here. They don't, there's a lot of philosophy going on that's not attached to the truth or to reality. For example, some of the philosophy is saying these days that, gee, what's the most efficient way to feed, and what's the cheapest way to feed an equine athlete? Well, hey, listen, if cheap is what you want to do, then get out of the athletic business. You're not in the right business to play cheap with your horses. You know, if you think that beet pulp is going to take you to the world championship, or if you think you can shovel junk hay and junk grain, little tiny skinny oats with a lot of shell on them to a horse and get away with it, or feed bran mash, or feed some irrelevant kind of nutrition to a horse, you're just kidding. Well, you can do it. Yeah, you can get away with it. Some horses will do, okay? And some horses you can really get away with that on. But for the most part, you're just nuts. You can't do it. You have to feed an athlete like he is an athlete. If he's a quality athlete, he gets the best of everything. That's just the way it is. Now, what is the best of everything? Well, one of the things it's not is fat. You've got a whole lot of grand poobahs of nutrition out there telling you that, wow, fat will save you money. You can feed an ounce of fat and it's worth 10 pounds of corn in terms of energy. So just pour a little fat into them and rock and roll all day long. Fat is the worst thing you can feed any equine athlete. It's the very worst possible nutrient. And why? Because carbohydrate, because muscle glycogen is the key to performance in all equine athletes. I don't care if it's an endurance horse or if it's a thoroughbred racehorse, quarter horse. Muscle glycogen is the key to staying power in all of these equine athletes, and including the endurance horse. And you don't get muscle glycogen from fat. You get fat from fat. And if fat is stored, it's either going to be stored in adipose tissue or it's going to be stored in intramuscular triglycerides. Good. You can feed 5% fat and get some of those intramuscular triglycerides stored away. That's fine. But 10, 12, 15% fat, at that point your muscle cells start thinking that, wow, this fat is wonderful stuff. We can live on this. All we have to do is slow down and not really do too much intense work, and we can go with this fat for the rest of our lives. Let's live on fat. And so they do. They learn how to live on fat. And they store away lipolytic enzymes instead of glycolytic enzymes. And as time goes on, you have a real efficient fat-burning machine. It's like running on diesel. There are engines made to run on diesel, and there are engines made to run on gasoline. Well, you've just turned a gasoline engine into a diesel engine. It takes about 6 to 8 weeks of a high-fat diet, and you've got the job done. Unfortunately, though, when it comes to firepower, when it comes to strong, sustained energy and athletic work, you've just lost it, because fat, first of all, doesn't even come into play in a race, in a flat race or a standardbred race. It doesn't spin up in time. You can't oxidize fat in 3 minutes. So it's useless. And so any kind of lipolytic enzymes that you've got stored in the muscle cells of those flat racing horses are useless, completely useless, and shouldn't be there. Shouldn't be there instead of muscle glycogen and glycolytic enzymes. Now, even in the endurance horse, one of the things you find is that no matter how much fat you've been able to stuff into this horse, you get out there on that trail, and if he runs low on glycogen, and you'll be able to know it because he'll be low in blood glucose. Once they go down in glycogen and it gets scary to the body, then it starts sucking the glucose out of the blood to help keep the exercise going. And so, you get to that 70-mile point, and you've got a crashed horse, and he's going to die maybe. You take his blood glucose, it's down to 50, 40, somewhere in that neighborhood, 60. Low blood glucose means depleted glycogen stores, and that's what stops them. That's the wall that you hit at 70 miles. We can solve that problem, but that's in your specific tape and not in this generalized presentation here in the front, so I'm not going to talk about that. But anyway, they need fuel, and so the basic fuel for all equine athletes is carbohydrates available in the form of grains: corn, oats, barley. Cob is what they call it out here. That's strategic nutrition. The base, where you start with. After you get going and you run into problems, let's say you've done the stupid thing with your horse and breezed those quarter miles and 3/8 miles, and now you got some joints looking at you, then you can bring on targeted nutrition. And that's the joint powders, bleeder medications, bleeder nutrients, vitamin E, vitamin C, hesperidin, bioflavonoids, that kind of thing. Ulcers, aloe vera juice, you let them drink that, with a cup of that over the grain every feeding. So you have targeted nutrition too. Now, nutritionists will, if they're from the old school, the old moronic school, they'll tell you, hey, nutrition means that you feed until you have no deficits in any given necessary nutrient. And thereafter, it doesn't do you any good at all. You're pissing away that vitamin C. Okay, all the minerals and vitamins you're putting on top of the basic NRC daily requirements, they're all wasted. Well, that's hogwash. These people either are completely illiterate of the literature or they're just stupid. There are many, many nutrients, for example, the chondroitin sulfates and the glucosamines, and vitamin C, vitamin E, that you can overfeed according to the NRC requirements. In fact, the NRC requirements are minimal. For like their protein requirements and things, they haven't the foggiest idea what an equine athlete needs. Not remotely close to what an equine athlete needs. But anyway, they'll come out and they'll tell you, gee, you're wasting your money on this and wasting your money on that, when you know that you just got results from that joint powder last week. You saw it work. You saw your horse get better. So I'm here to tell you that there are a lot of different kinds and ways to play with nutrition to get an advantage that is over and above those seen with just making the NRC daily requirement criteria. But still, your daily ration is going to be your strategic weapon in terms of building your athlete. It has to be something that you're not changing a lot, that stays steady, that is the complete ration and is suiting your athlete's needs. And, the major component of that is the carbohydrate intake. And the way you judge your carbohydrate intake, one real good way is never let the horse lose weight during training. If you've got a scale, and everybody should have a scale, almost nobody does, but you should have a scale. If you've got a scale, you can weigh the horse every day and you can see fluctuations in his weight. And you might see a real hard race or a real hard breeze. He might drop 25, 30, sometimes 40 pounds. And then in 3 or 4 days, it comes back up. Well, what that is muscle glycogen being repaid into the muscles. And for every ounce of glycogen that goes into the muscles, there's 3 or 4 ounces of water to keep it in solution. And so, you're packing those muscles. Oh, it's all water weight. Yeah, it's kind of water weight. It's muscle glycogen with the water it needs to be metabolized. But it's not all water. It's not useless weight. It's very beneficial weight. And you want those muscles to be pumped up with glycogen all the time. And you never want to underfeed so those muscles, so the horse starts dropping weight. He's not dropping fat. He is dropping muscle mass. He's dropping lean muscle mass. And to the extent that you weaken him that way, then he's going to be less of an athlete when it comes. He won't be able to stand the stressors of event-specific preparation. He'll bow a tendon. He'll pull. If he doesn't have the nutrition, he's going to go out and get it someplace, and he'll tear down. He'll go catabolic. He'll tear down some tissue someplace else and feed the muscle that is working overtime here with no supply, with no fuel supply. You don't want an animal in a catabolic state. You want him always as anabolic as you can get him. You want to have him climbing that supercompensation ladder, and he can't do that if he has a deficit in energy. And energy is going to be carbohydrate energy, not fat energy. Now just erase fat from your whole consideration. Just take my word for it. And so those are some of the basic rules of conditioning. Another one is long and slow to short and fast. That's a good one for, it works for human track athletes and for human swimmers, but it's also good for all of equines, mainly because of that structure, because the muscles get fit in a horse faster than the structural things do. The collagen, the cartilage, the bone, the fascia around the muscles, the ligaments, tendons, they all condition slowly, and the muscles get fat or get fit fast. You can put firepower in a horse with 3 breezes 3 days apart, where it might take 6 months to build bones to be capable of handling that kind of firepower safely. And so you have to be really careful how you bring on the speed, and the way to do it is to go from longer, slower works to shorter and incrementally faster works. In other words, if you start out with miles, then you go to 3/4, then you go to 5/8, then you go to halves, and halves should be the shortest breeze you'll ever do with a thoroughbred. And halves are our final grind on the standardbreds as well. Then you've done the right thing, because each one of those can go faster, and the horse goes shorter and likes to go faster. It's not that you're pushing him to go faster. He just can naturally go faster because he's going shorter. We'll get into a whole thing on how to specifically condition racehorses in your guys' tape. But as far as this tape is concerned, that's a good proposition to keep in mind. Long and slow to short and fast. It's the best way to build any athlete. Safest way. Okay, I want to go further into some of the disciplines that come under the umbrella of equine sports medicine. You've got several sciences at work here. We've got biomechanics, got nutrition, we've got exercise science, we've got all the medicine areas, the diagnostics, the monitoring, not only for exercise design, but for avoiding injuries and catching injuries early. If you can catch an injury early, you're way ahead of the game compared to having to play defense and try to repair something that may or may not be irrevocably broken. It's not like a race car where you can pull a tire off and put another one on. When the wheels fall off a racehorse, it's over for that horse's career. They seldom come back to being as good as they could have been. So let's think about some of the other disciplines. One of the things I want to talk about strongly, and it can never be emphasized enough, is the biomechanics of performance horse gaits and shoeing and this type of thing. One of the big problems we see in standardbreds, thoroughbreds, some endurance horses, jumpers, a lot of horses, there is this fascination and love for big long toes, low underslung heels, and in racehorses, toe grabs in the U.S. Toe grabs are outlawed everywhere else in the world but the U.S. And this is a real damaging proposition for all horses, including the endurance horses. Basically what you're doing, the horse is coming down on a foot that's not too much bigger than my hand. And that horse, depending on what speed he's doing, is experiencing 2,000 pounds to 12,000 pounds of stress, concussion, with every stride, and that's passed up the leg, and it's thrown into different vectors depending on what the angle of the foot is, whether the foot is balanced side to side, how strong the tendons and ligaments are, if the muscles up here in the forearm have given up and are allowing the fetlock to droop when they're fatigued. Half a dozen different things are applying to safe or unsafe biomechanics of the horse. And one of the most important aspects of safety is that hoof angle and toe length. If the angle's too low and the toe length is too long, then when the foot comes back and wants to break over for the next stride, that breakover is delayed. It's like wearing clown shoes. If you put shoes on your feet that are 2 inches too long and you try to run as fast as you can, you'll fall down because the toes are too long and this leg doesn't get off the ground in time to come back while this leg is in its stance phase. So you can't recover, okay? And that happens to all performance horses, but particularly those horses that are moving fast, is that long toe and low heel cause the foot to delay in its breakover. And when that happens, a bunch of things happen. One thing is the ankle bends backwards and the knee bends backwards. That's called over-dorsiflexion. So at the front of those joints, something's getting squeezed, and it's usually in the knee, it's the third carpal bone. In the ankle, you'll get all sorts of chips and lips and wear and scar tissue. Everything goes wrong when that leg bends backwards. But also behind the leg, then you're also overstretching from the XYZs in the pastern to the tendons and suspensory ligament in the back of the leg, and so you get bows from that kind of a problem, and you get if the toe's up on its nose and it's staying there too long, and if there's any kind of sideways rocking while that's going on, then the suspensories blow as well. So it's a bad deal. Now, where did this idea that long toes and low heels are good, where did it come from? Well, back in the 40s, there were some people writing books that saw that horses with a long toe and a lower heel daisy clipped when they're stride. They didn't go like this, but they went like this, back and forth, and that was believed to be an efficient motion, and also believed that it caused a longer stride. And what they said, hey, if it's an inch longer stride, then in 200 strides in a mile, I've got 200 inches ahead of the guy over here. Well, the joke is that's not true at all. A stride, remember this, okay, just get this one thing in your mind to remember forever, for the rest of your life. The front legs are there to keep the horse's nose off the ground. That's the only reason they're there. They do not pull the horse forward. The only time you ever see a horse pull himself forward with his forelegs, if he's climbing a hill and his back legs are slipping out from behind him, then he'll try to scramble with his front legs. When he does that, he'll injure a shoulder. 9 times out of 10, you'll get a shoulder injury because the horse is not designed to pull with his front legs. Instead, those front legs, when they're on the ground, anytime that foot is actually touching the ground, it's a brake. It's slowing the horse down. So, given that, then you don't want that front leg on the ground very long. If it's on the ground too long, then it just delays what's going on behind. And the behind is where all the power comes from. It's where all the forward motion comes from. Those hind legs are designed to reach up and grab some ground and throw it back behind the horse. That's what they're for. They're the propulsion. That's where the engine is back there. You don't want the front legs to delay or interfere with what the back legs are trying to do. If the front legs are delayed too long, then the back leg is kind of afraid to come up into that area because the front leg is there, and the horse will get interference. If he gets enough interference, he'll stop doing it, period, and you'll never get a good stride out of the horse because he'll short stride behind trying to miss the front legs. Now, this goes for gallopers as well as it does for trotters, because gallopers sometimes go in a rotary gallop. Now, the normal gallop is, let's take an example, left hind, left front, right front. That's the right lead, okay? That's the normal. It's a diagonal gallop, ba-dum, ba-dum, okay? A rotary gallop goes left hind, right front, left front. It goes around the horse. It's a rotary gallop. Now the problem with that stride is that when you do bung, 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 and then this back leg over here is coming up, these two want to interfere with each other for the next, in between the next stride. Actually what you've got is ding, 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 and then an air time, and then this interference with these two legs are both trying, this leg is coming back, this leg is going forward, and they interfere. Now, a thoroughbred coming out of the starting gate, a third of the time will be in a rotary gallop. A quarter horse coming out of the starting gate, almost 90% of the time will be in a rotary gallop. And this rotary gallop might last for 5 to 15 strides in either breed. During that time, especially the first couple of jumps, that horse is subject to interference in that rotary gallop. So what you want is those front feet to be getting out of the way as quick as they can so the horse doesn't stumble coming out of the starting gate or stumble coming around a turn when he changes lead, because the same thing happens in a lead change. In a lead change, you're going around the turn this way and you're on the left lead, which means you're doing right rear, right front, left front. Okay, now you run around the turn like that on the left lead. Coming out of the turn, though, it's time to rest this lead and go to the other lead. Well, that takes 2 strides. They don't do it. They don't do flying lead changes in a race. They might do it in a dressage contest where the horse can hop from one lead to another, but in a race, you're rattling down that straightaway, and you don't have time to hop in the air unless you jump over something, and you've seen that happen in races. The horse loses ground, big ground, and sometimes falls down. You don't want to be hopping down the straightaway. What you want to be doing is just making a nice fluid lead change. And so the way they do it is they change the hind legs first and then the forelegs next stride. And so here's a horse that's been going ba-bum, ba-bum, okay? Now, instead, he goes ba-bum, but then he's changed the back legs, but he still keeps the front legs doing the same thing for one stride. So he goes ba-bum, ba-bum, okay? Then the next stride, he goes ba-bum, ba-bum, and he's on the right lead, and he'll go out and go right to the finish line with that diagonal, the right diagonal. But that middle stride is the rotary gallop, ba-bum, bum, bum, and these two want to come together. So, to prevent cataclysmic injuries on even thoroughbreds, you want to avoid having that front foot delayed for whatever reason. Delay comes from a low foot angle, 47 degrees, and toe grabs. If you take a low angle and then make it 2 degrees worse by doing this to it with the toe grab. Again, the horse does not pull himself forward with his forelegs. That means there's no need for toe grabs on the front. Instead, better a rocker toe or a rolled toe. Better a rolled racing plate that the shoe is actually rolled itself and you don't have to cut up into the horse's foot to get a roll. But breakover is the key in front. Breakover, it's number 1. And that goes for horses that are endurance horses. An endurance horse at the trot that clicks is interfering front to back. And the reason it's interfering front to back is because the front foot isn't getting out of the way in time. The front foot is delayed. The back foot comes up at the trot and grabs it, and sometimes pulls the shoe. Sometimes, you can pull a shoe on a thoroughbred or an endurance horse and crack a cannon bone, not a cannon bone, a coffin bone, instantly, just like this, and it's over. Then it's over. Goodbye, horse. It's over. The career is finished. One split second, one stupid mistake by his feet, but by your shoeing, and you've got a horse that's lost to you. All the investment, all the time, everything you put into that horse, including the emotions, which for endurance people can get pretty strong. For thoroughbred people, for some, they can get strong as well. Myself, the emotional side of it, in my opinion, you just got to avoid it, because we're in a game that's much like professional sports. Athletes get hurt. Sometimes athletes get killed. We have horses that get hurt and get killed, and a lot of horses get hurt real quick before they've paid anything back. You get a football player, you pay him $1 million a year, he goes out and delivers some real nice games, he attracts a lot of attention and gets people watching your football games. That's good, it's a profitable situation. And if he only lasts for 4 years, well, tough luck, kid. Bring on the next tight end and we'll use him up. But with a racehorse, you use them up too fast. And even an endurance horse, you wait so long to build an endurance horse. It takes years to build an international level endurance horse, and you don't want to make one stupid mistake that'll end that horse's career. You just can't do it. Or you don't want to start and rebuild him all the way through an injury and crossing your fingers that what you're doing is going to bring him back to 100%. Hey, again, you can't replace those wheels like you can on a car. Once those wheels are hurt, then you've got all sorts of complications that are on the way. You're going to be looking at ring bone, you're going to be looking at arthritis, you're going to be looking at scar tissue. Everything you don't want to see in an athlete, and the horse's immune system is hyperactive. It's going to go in there and try to immobilize the joint, and when it does that, then you're immobilizing the horse's career, his competitive career. So you don't want to make stupid mistakes like low angles and long toes. And toe grabs. You just don't want to make a toe grab. Here we are. The horse comes down, the foot comes down like this, hits the ground and slides forward, and that's the normal foot impact. With a toe grab, the heel hits, the toe hits, and it jams right there, and that shock goes right up the leg. The whole idea of this slide is to dissipate. You don't want a big spike of concussion and stress on the leg. You want that spike to go up in a kind of a nice little curve, so that at no point in time do you get a big spike. With a misstep, that 12,000 pounds of stress on the leg can go to 18,000 pounds in about 1/100th of a second. And 18,000 pounds snaps a cannon bone. You don't want those kinds of things happening. You don't want the interference. You don't want the extra stress. You don't want bowed tendons. You don't want all of those things. Plus, it slows the horse down, because what makes stride length is not where the front feet go, but where the back feet go. You measure stride by where this left hind impacted and when it impacts again. You measure the difference between those two footfalls, the hind leg. You don't care what the front legs are doing. The hind leg is what gives you the stride length, and if it's inhibited from reaching by the possibility of interference, it's not going to go anywhere, and you're not going to get a big long stride. Even though that stupid leg is going out there daisy clipping and it looks wonderful, it's not wonderful. Plus, stride length's not the key to speed anyway. The key to speed is rate of turnover, stride turnover. And that's neuromuscular coordination again. It's for trotters, for pacers, for thoroughbreds, for quarter horses. That's all neuromuscular coordination. You don't want some mechanical thing screwing up what has to be the most efficient neuromuscular coordination that you can develop your athlete to have. So then those trotting guys like Sylvester, hell, they're putting weights all over the foot, trying to get the foot to fly right so it won't bang into the shin of the hind leg. They like the long toe, they like the low heel. So starting from there, what do you have to do? Well, you have to really do some exotic stuff to the foot to get a reasonable gait, get a horse that doesn't step on himself all day long. Now, with the thoroughbred guys, another thing you get is what they call this navicular disease, which 99% of the time is not navicular disease, but pinch heels. If that toe goes down and the heel follows it, then pretty soon you get a smaller and smaller squeezed up heel, and it starts to get sore, and so do the bulbs of the heel. They start to get, hell, they're hitting the ground on some of these horses. And so they get sore too, and so the horse gets off, and then the vet will say, navicular, it's over. Send him to George Malin at Cornell University and take a $100,000 tax write-off. Well, you know what George does? He's got a shoer there who knows what he's doing. That's one shoer out of 1,000 knows, well, I won't say that. Maybe 1 out of 100 knows what he's doing. George has got one of them. All of those $100,000 thoroughbreds are now, that were turned over to George as tax write-offs because of incurable navicular, are now playing polo in arena polo for their polo team at Cornell University. They're happy as hell. They've got brand new feet. How did they get brand new feet? Well, they opened up their heels. And how do you open up the heels? Well, you put the shoe where you want the foot to go, and the foot goes there. If you need more heel backwards, you need a better angle of the heel, then bring the shoe back just a little bit behind the heel. And if you need more heel wide, then put the shoe a little bit wide at the heel, and the foot will go to it. And then as soon as the foot goes to it, pull that shoe off and put another one on that gets more. Now, there's nothing wrong with having a big foot. In fact, it's good to have more foot mass, because then you don't get quarter cracks and all the other things. You've got plenty of cushion there. So, and you can race in mud and turf, and the big-footed horse does quite well in those on those surfaces. So, you want to go that way too. So there's nothing wrong with a big-footed horse. And the way to get a bigger foot, well, you do the same thing. You put the shoe where you want the foot to go. And that means, basically, the story is you can run a nickel all the way around that shoe. Instead of putting on a shoe that's too small and rasping down the foot, horsing the shoe rather than shoeing the horse, instead of doing that, you put on a shoe that's a little bit too big. For anybody that's doing any miles, you damn near have to do this. You have to grow as big a foot as you can, because that concussion of all that work has to be absorbed, and it has to be absorbed first at the feet. So grow a bigger foot, that's fine. Just don't grow toe exclusively. Grow heel, get a balanced foot. And a balanced foot is going to be in any horse, it's going to be at least 52 degrees angle in the front feet. 47 degrees is just no good. That's bowed tendons, that's cracked knees, cracked sesamoids. It's just bad biomechanics. It's just bad science. Unfortunately, at the racetrack, it's the special of the day. And I've shipped horses to the racetrack and had them come back double bowed from these guys that slapped those heels, chopped them right off, and slapped on those big long toe grabs and breezed them, and bing bing, there goes both tendons. And they come back, and when both tendons go, that somebody's made a really big mistake. Particularly in a race, because that's what we ship them in. We don't ship them in unfit. We ship them in ready to rock and roll. So avoid the long toe, low heel like the plague. Okay, let me set this one up for you. I'm in France. You're looking at Fabrice Souloy and his wife talking to me about a horse named Korean. And she's explaining to me that the horse is lame. The problem is the TV cameras are there to do a big story about this horse. We've worked with this horse now for about 6 months, and he's winning everything in sight. So this is my first time there, and I'm trying to see what's right and what's wrong about this horse, and guide him into his next two big races where he's got to win if he's going to do anything, if he's going to be champion for the year. So now she's told me that he's a little bit off, and what I'm noticing about these French trotters, or the European trotters in general, is that they all have long toes and relatively low angles. And so I'm concerned about this. The day after this is taken, we're going to be bringing in infrared thermography, and we're going to find a knee problem on the left fore. The wife is telling me that the horse is off on the left fore, but I have yet to see that. I'm going to be seeing it here in a minute. But meanwhile, look at the big long toes on this horse. That's a problem. Okay, now we're on the track, and if you watch this horse for a little bit, you'll see that he's not sound. But now the trainer, Fabrice, he thinks the horse is sound. That's just the way he's always gone. That's Fabrice's idea of how nice this horse is moving. To me, the horse is, if not dead lame, quite lame on the left fore. You tell me. The head goes up on the bad leg, it goes down on the good leg. So what happens is we go down to the training track, which is a straight track. The horse is going to do an interval workout, but he's going to do one much slower than we had planned, because the horse, to me and to the wife, is obviously lame. Now these pictures are being taken by the television crew, and they're looking at their hero, Korean, out there getting warmed up, preparing to go to work. And you can see that he's lame as he can be. But we're going to do some works because, half of this game for them is publicity. This horse eventually gets syndicated for $1.7 million. He does win the important races, and he does make enough money for him to be a syndicated horse, stallion at the end of the year. So, we're successful, but we have definitely a clear-cut problem right now. And we're getting ready to turn and go. Now I want to show you one of the problems. You've seen how this horse tucks its head and kind of sticks its rear end out behind it. And that's because of the long toe. The long toe is making this guy, it's causing a delay in the front foot stance phase. And as this delay occurs, the front foot is slow to break over, but the hind foot wants to go and is being told to go by the driver in a race or in any kind of fast work, even slow work. You have this problem. And so what you're going to see is a case of what is called negative dissociation. Negative dissociation occurs in a trot when the forefoot hits prior to the hind foot impacting on the ground. That's a bad situation. The forefoot's on the ground too long. It's delaying the whole stride doing that. It's a break while it's on the ground. Everything's wrong about negative dissociation. What you want is positive dissociation, where the hind foot impacts prior to the forefoot on the diagonal. Okay, now you can see, watch, there we are, right there. The forefoot hits before the hind foot. Sometimes he's got some positive dissociation, but right now you're seeing negative dissociation. Forefoot, hind foot. Now that was positive dissociation. Negative dissociation. Negative dissociation. Negative dissociation. Negative dissociation. Still negative dissociation. Now what goes wrong here then is that if that foot is delayed coming back, then the hind end has to stick out behind just to miss that forefoot. And then to balance that, the horse tucks his head down. Meanwhile, the faster he goes, the more over dorsiflexion he's going to experience in his ankles and his knees. And what he ends up with, he's got a sore left front foot, but his big problem is a knee on the left front at the third carpal bone, which is getting pinched as that leg over dorsiflexes. He's also got sore hocks both sides, but mainly the left front knee is his big problem. That's why he's nodding his head. But the negative dissociation comes before the injuries. In other words, it's probably the cause of the injuries in this horse. And this kind of trot occurs in thoroughbreds. It occurs in endurance horses. Any horse that's in a trot that has too long a toe is going to have negative dissociation. Bad deal. Okay, here we are in Belgium. This time we're looking at jumpers. And one of the characteristics of jumpers, either because of the work that they have to do or because of the way they're being shod, some of them tend to have long toes and crushed heels, real bad heels. Now, in this case, we're going through a barn that doesn't have a real good shoer, and we're looking at these horses with infrared thermography, another technology I want to introduce you to. You can see that camera on the screen. The parts that are yellow are hot and inflamed, or normal because they're over a blood vessel. And the parts that are red and purple and even darker colors, they're cooler areas. This horse right in the area that we're looking at now. And we'll let them go around. But now, as we look at these horses, we'll be looking underneath the feet, at the feet for balance. In this case, we're looking at a place where a horse got kicked. And any inflammatory process like that says that damage has been done and repair is underway. Here we're looking at a horse that shows some inflammation at the back of the fetlock, back where the sesamoids are, a little bit of XYZ inflammation. Now, he says it's been here for a long time, but this kind of thing is relatively normal for these jumpers. They tend to have crushed heels. They jump over there. Now, look at this foot. You can see that the toe would be a lot longer if it wasn't squared, but see, on the thermography you can see that area at the back of the heel is crushed. It's inflamed. It has a problem. And that's because the shoe is not being put on properly at the heel. You should have the shoes coming on wide at the heel and long at the heel. And if you don't, then you're going to run into this kind of a problem where you've got an underslung heel and a pinched heel, a sore heel, just because of poor shoeing. The shoer is trying to get foot back, get more heel back on this horse than he has currently. I'll let you listen to some of the discussion that's going on here. Where you want the foot to go, and slowly but surely the foot comes to the shoe. Foot than we saw on the other one.
Yeah, it's completely yellow.
Yeah, and extremely hot. Now I'm going to get rid of some of that yellow, but see where the yellow stays. Okay, now we're looking at the underside of the foot. At this heel right here. And looking to see where the hot spots are, and you can see where the bright yellow spots are. Right now the whole foot is inflamed, but I'm pointing out to them real typical, and what your guys where the hot spots are and why they're there. Notice how that shoe is curled underneath the foot. There's more foot outside the shoe than there is inside the shoe. If he puts this out, now he's doing the right thing here. See, he's got extra shoe here. That's good.
Things here.
But he's coming in too tight. Yeah. So
it's more open.
Yeah, more open and more straight. You know. And that'll solve some of this contraction that you're getting right there. I'm seeing something a little bit funny on that right tendon, but I'm not sure. And I'm seeing a little knock down here on the left ankle. The feet are normal. The knees appear to be normal. I'm going to walk in front of the horse. Look, feet. We've got, you can see the little clip there coming up, and that's the funny place on the foot. Going up the legs, and we got a little bit of knee on the inside here. But from the front, we're not seeing too much, although we're going to see something back there. See that? I'll turn the temperature down just a little bit. See that patch back there? Something's going on there. But otherwise, we're real clean on this guy now from the front. Now let's go around. Let me move my temperature down and isolate this. So
He was bandaged, eh? He had bandages on, huh?
yeah, but the bandage artifact is we're not looking at artifact here. It would be the whole leg that was lit up. We've got something going on there. The other guys. Okay, now we're looking again at another set of feet here where this time you've got a combination of a long toe and crushed heels. Notice how the heel on the left fore, the foot is coming over the shoe. You never want to have that kind of thing happen. And that means that you haven't been shoeing the horse on a timely basis, and that when the shoer does put on shoes, he's putting shoes on that are too small and enabling the horse's hoof to grow over the shoe itself relatively quickly. In other words, the heel should always be growing.
I'll let you listen to the discussion here.
And so right now, that foot is over the shoe. And there's a real sore spot at the inside heel of this horse's foot. And some distortion in the sole, but the big problem is right here at this heel. That's very, very sore and inflamed. Now, if you take a look at with the camera, take a look at the actual shoe, you can see that the horse has got a bar shoe on, but he's got the shoe elevated from the original shoe, giving the horse an extra 2 degrees of angle, which is cute for when the horse has to go back to work, but not for right now when we're still trying to solve the healing problem. Take this bar off, straighten these ends of the shoe like this, and encourage the heel to grow rearward for the time being. And then once you have your heel back, and you still might have a little bit of sore foot, then put the bar back on, but not to get angle, but rather straight across, not to get angle. The angle fools the foot into thinking the problem's over, and the problem's not over.
Binnenkant en daar.
Here, look, see this? See that hot spot right there? It's screaming. That hurts.
Can you see if he has a...
Yeah, there you go. Okay. Up through here, it's hot, and on the side of the fetlock right here, was that shaved or not?
No.
No? Okay, right there is a hot spot. Now, we might see something like that on the inside, too. Truly, this is all screaming. All of this is hot. It's almost like if you... endurance horses too. You know, you go over there and I've been over there in the UAE where all the big endurance races take place, and believe me, the shoeing there is atrocious. It's the worst kind of shoeing known to mankind. Talk about bad biomechanics. Those guys haven't got the foggiest idea how to shoe a horse. So, you know, one time we went for a 100-miler in Syria, flew over the no-fly zone in Iraq and landed in Syria, and ran a 100-mile race against a bunch of Syrian military guys. All the sheiks brought their horses in, but the Syrian military guys had about 60 to 100 head of horses that they put in this race as well. And these guys had pads on their horses to protect their feet, and you kind of need, in that kind of terrain, which is some places real deep sand, some places real hard pan with stones on it, you do need some kind of foot protection. And so these guys put pads on their horses, but what the pads were made of was 1/4-inch steel. They drill holes through the steel and match it to the shoe and nail it on, and tip up the steel on the sides so it's stuck to the foot. And so here they had a pound on this foot and a pound on that foot and a pound on each hind foot. And then they go out and rock and roll, and these guys thought that endurance was, hey, step on the gas and don't look back. So what you would find as your horses would go out is that there's a dead horse here, a dead horse there, a dead horse there, a dead horse there. They hadn't the foggiest. They were just basically trying to compete with the sheiks, because the sheiks needed people to race against. And that's the way things are done over there. In general, the sheiks run things, and those people who don't run things do what they're told to do. And the sheiks kind of need to be entertained a lot. So you get that kind of a situation. Okay, let's take a generalized overview of training protocols for a minute. Basically, there are only a few different kinds of exercise. There's continuous exercise. There's intermittent exercise, which means you work and you rest, and you work and you rest. And that intermittent exercise is either interval training or repetition training. Or it can be fartlek, which is you're going along at a speed, you stay going along but at a lesser speed, then you accelerate again, then you decelerate, then you accelerate again. That was the origin of interval training. Later it became, interval training became honest to God rest periods in between much faster bouts of exercise, and it was designed to give stamina, to give sprinters that were, let's say, going 440 yards, the ability to go 880 and run a half mile and double out in the longer distance. And it used to be, long ago, it used to be that the milers would double down to the half mile because it was just too long for a sprinter to do. Sprinters weren't conditioned to go long. But what they found out eventually is that natural speed is a hell of a lot better than natural endurance, because you can condition in endurance, but you can't condition in as much speed. There has to be some natural efficiency of stride and neuromuscular coordination to make speed, where the slow guy has a hell of a lot harder time going fast than the fast guy has going long and slow. So what you saw then was kind of a revolution where sprinters would be stretched out to run distances, and the way they did it was with interval training. And what interval is just basically at least 2 bouts of exercise with a short partial recovery rest period. And what that allows you to do in those 2 bouts is to go faster with each of them than you would be able to go if you did the whole thing at once. And let's say you work a 1/4 mile and a 1/4 mile, a human. Let's bring it up to a horse now. Half mile. And basically horses are twice as fast as humans in general. Okay, so a human 1/4 mile takes the same amount of time as the equine. Is that correct? Yeah, half a mile. Right, about a minute. Human 1/4 is about a minute, and the equine half is less than a minute, considerably less than a minute, but roughly half. They run twice as fast, maybe a little more than twice as fast at top speed. So you take a half and you take a half. Now, in between those, how long a distance do you go that's a rest period? I mean, walking and maybe jogging up and then walking and then jogging up. Active rest, that's called. And what active rest does is get the garbage out of any damage that was done to the muscle cells, any lactic acid buildup or whatever gets flushed away out of those muscle cells, and they're not so painful anymore. And then the athlete is real good warmed up now and goes back for the second bout and goes faster. And that's a partial recovery rest period. What that does is glue those two pieces of work together so that it's not just a half they're getting fit for, but longer than a half. Now, with a standardbred in the U.S., we'll finish out with workouts that are 6 times a half mile with 5-minute rest periods in between. And that gives us a mile's worth of maximal performance or near maximal performance. And that's kind of the way intervals work, is that you want to go the longer distance, but you don't dare bang against that 2-minute barrier or the 156 barrier or whatever barrier that you're facing with the horse and try to go 155 instead of the horse's capability right now, which is 156. You're just asking for trouble. You're asking to hurt the horse. That's fatigue. You're on the ragged edge of fatigue. Never fatigue the horse, ever, because his biomechanics go all to pieces and he'll get hurt. So how do you go faster at a mile is you go shorter in short bouts, each one getting a little bit faster, so your first half mile might be clear up in 108, something like that. But your fastest half mile might be down here in 158, and it'll be the last one. Para 158 gives you a 156 miler, a 58 and a 57 gives you a 155 miler. So, hey, you're on the way. And that's what interval training is. It's a way to glue together several heats of exercise into one longer performance that is faster than the horse can do today. And with this conditioning effect and with the rebound and supercompensation, then he will be faster on Thursday because of today's interval workout. And then Thursday, we'll catch him right at that peak of supercompensation and bang him again. And then he'll get even faster and faster and faster until pretty soon we've got the athlete we're looking for. Now there's another kind of multiple heat work, and that's called repetitions. And repetitions is what we typically use on hills. Repetitions have full recovery. In other words, the heart rate drops and goes down below the floor, which is 100. Then you turn and go your next heat. Now, repetitions are used to build firepower, to build speed. If you have a horse that can't make speed at all, and usually they are very few and far between, but once in a while you got a horse with a leg like this, there's a horse that can't make speed. He's losing efficiency and stride. And you really don't want to bang on a horse like that because you'll break him down. But let's say that you've got a horse that for some reason, maybe it's a fast twitch, slow twitch, muscle fiber type ratio, and he's got too damn many slow twitch and not enough fast twitch, and you want to move some of those toward the fast twitch, which you can do. It's plastic. Those muscle cells are plastic. All parts of the horse's body, the bones are plastic. You can change them. Everything is plastic in the horse. It can be changed with conditioning. And in this case, we're trying to give speed to an athlete who's not got quite enough of it. Then you go to repetitions, which is basically close to all-out exercise, or even faster than all-out exercise. The Russians used to pull their sprinters along behind pickup trucks faster than they could make their legs move to give them that extra neuromuscular coordination. And that's super fast exercise. You can do that on high-speed treadmills with racehorses. You can do 132-mile rates on those treadmills, even if you got a 138 miler. You can make their legs move that fast. So that's a repetition. That's super maximal speed or near maximal speed. or maximal speed. And, you know, with hill climbs, we're asking for maximal power or maximal power, even if we're not asking for maximal speed. And so we do repetitions up the hill instead of intervals. If we did intervals up the hill, we'd have a horse fatigued in 3 heats. And we don't want to do that. We don't ever want to fatigue the horse. So we don't do intervals when we're doing maximal power works. We do repetitions. So that's what you've got. You know, basically that's what you've got. You've either got all consistent exercise all at one time, or you've got pieces of exercise done in multiple heats, and you can manipulate the amount of rest between the heats. You can manipulate the number of heats in an interval workout or a repetition workout, and you can manipulate the speeds at which those repetitions or intervals go. And that makes interval training a toolbox of 1,000 tools. Now, almost nobody in the world in thoroughbred racing uses interval training. There are some. Colin Hayes over in Australia used it to build his great racehorses, and he had plenty of great racehorses. Over here, DeHaas was interval trained because he had to work uphill. The hill wasn't long enough to do the work that was necessary to get him to go a mile. And so what he would do is shoot 3 halves up the hill, each half faster than the other one. And he wasn't the soundest horse in the world, and you couldn't do that on the flat. And you couldn't take him as fast as you'd have to take him on the flat to get a horse that would deliver a 135 mile, which he did two times to win the Breeders' Cup. 2 years apart, because in between he's not a sound horse. If you go uphill, you've got a lot less concussion and pressure on the forelegs. And so, you know, it's really good work for a horse that's not quite sound as you'd like him to be on the flat. So with intervals, then you use them with any athlete that you want to be working at quick speeds, but for longer periods of time. That's what interval training delivers for you. So that would include thoroughbreds and standardbreds. Probably wouldn't include quarter horses. You'd be doing repetitions with quarter horses. Probably would help jumpers to a degree, but your big conditioner with jumpers would be hills and repetitions. Eventing horses, interval training has been part of the eventing protocol for decades now, and they know what they're doing. So I'm not really trying to advise them. And even in endurance now, we set a world record for endurance for 100 miles over there with horses that were doing intervals, but they would do like 30-mile intervals, and they would do like 10, 10, 10. At a faster rate than they would do in a race. So if we broke it down to 100-miler going 10, then resting for a while, then going 10, and then resting for a while, and then going 10, that's a hell of a lot easier for them to do than it is to go a straight 100 miles at a slower speed. So we were able to pick up the speed, get the heart rate up, get some real good cardiovascular conditioning done with intervals, and some of it was done on the track, some of it was done on a high-speed treadmill. Over there, the Sheik had a couple high-speed treadmills in the barn, and we used those quite a lot. So that's what interval training is. Interval training is multiple heats of exercise with partial recovery rest periods. Repetition training for power is, and intervals are for staying power, and LSD, which is the long slow distance, is just for endurance, and that's a different thing than stamina or staying power. Probably better to use the word stamina than endurance in that. And then repetitions is for firepower, and those repetitions are full recovery rest periods between rock and roll bouts of exercise. However, every workout that you do with a horse, you have to warm into it. You can't just start banging right from the get-go. You don't want to shoot 10 one-minute halves. You want to shoot a 110 half, 108, 106, 104, 101, 100, you know. You don't want to shoot them all at the same plateau because the horse naturally wants to warm in to his exercise. And if you're monitoring heart rates, and we might as well talk about heart rate monitoring while we're talking here. If you're monitoring heart rates, and you shoot, let's say you're shooting multiple three-quarter heats, and you shoot 1 3/4, and you achieve a heart rate of 216, you get a quick recovery, and then you shoot the next one faster, and you achieve a heart rate of 212, and an even faster recovery. How can that happen? You go faster and you get a lower heart rate response. Well, it happens because the horse has a spleen that has a lot of room in it. It's a big suitcase-sized organ in the middle of their body that stores away red blood cells. And the fitter the horse gets, the higher the percentage of red cells that are stored away in the spleen. And that spleen then contracts when the emergency speed button goes off. The spleen contracts and injects all those red cells into the bloodstream, so the horse basically carries around a backpack of endurance in his spleen. Well, if you shoot the one heat, then go back to shoot the next one, what has happened in between those is that the spleen is contracted. Now the horse has twice as many red cells out there in the bloodstream as he had for the first heat, and his heart rate response to that second heat, even though it goes faster, is lower because he's got all the extra oxygen carrying capacity of those extra red cells. So that's why you see that funny kind of a deal. Now, so your workouts always go from slower to faster, heat by heat if you're doing multiple heats. If you're just doing one heat at a time, you're not getting much done, but if that's what you're doing, then you don't have to worry about these things. Let's talk about heart rate. You know, as we go into this thing and we get into the other parts of the sciences that are involved in building athletes, one of them is monitoring, and one of the best monitoring tools is the onboard heart rate monitor. Heart rates in horses are real volatile compared to humans. The horse's low heart rate can be down under 30 resting in the stall, and it can shoot up above 230 in a race or in a fast workout. Where the typical human heart rate averages, you know, a real fit guy might be 60 beats per minute, and he might peak out at 200. So the horse has got a wider range of heart rate. He's got a really well-developed cardiovascular system when it comes to the spleen with all the extra red cells, with the fact that as those red cells go through the lungs, you get 100% saturation of oxygen in most cases all the way through. Very big heart pump, very fast heartbeat, very powerful heart muscle. You know, the horse is born with these things. You know, you can develop some of it, and you can get more capillaries. Like if you go out there and do a lot of semi-strong work at about 180, 190 heart rate, you'll get a lot more capillarization in the lungs, in the muscles, throughout the horse's body. A lot of little capillaries go out there. It'll bring down the overall blood pressure, but get blood into areas that can be oxygen starved in the middle of a high-speed piece of work. And also at the interchange of the lungs where the blood's picking up oxygen. And where you want strong capillaries, you don't want those damn capillaries blowing up and causing a bleeder, which they will if the horse has no cardiovascular development. You know, think of cardiovascular development as a half hour of 180 heart rate in a horse. And you should be doing that twice, 3 times a week. Okay, if you're going to experience any cardiovascular development at all in the horse, you have to do that twice or 3 times a week. Well, a half hour, let's say your horse is galloping slow, and actually a 3-minute lick won't do it. You'd have to be down around 240 in a thoroughbred, galloping at 240 to get 180 heart rate, 190 heart rate, maybe faster. Okay, but let's say 3 minutes. With a real young baby. Now, what's a half hour of 3-minute lick? You get 10 miles. Okay, there's no thoroughbred in this country that has ever seen 10 continuous miles. That is being trained to be a thoroughbred racehorse. They don't exist. People don't know how to do it. The exercise rider will call his lawyer before he'd get on a horse and do 10 miles. And that's unfortunate, because that's why 80 or 90% of them, that's one of the reasons why 80 or 90% of them bleed when they race, is that they've got very weak lungs, weak cardiovascular development in terms of the blood vessels. But, you know, and then another thing that's going to happen with these thoroughbreds, or any racehorse, when you get good cardiovascular work into them, is that the spleen is going to store more and more red cells. And what that means is that the resting PCV is going to drop. It's going to be up around 40 to start with, and it's going to start to drop and drop and drop the fitter the horse gets. Now, this makes trainers run to the vet for blood builders. Oh my God, he's down at 33. The poor horse is anemic. We need to get some iron into him and some B vitamins. And what else you got, Doc? Well, I got some EPO here in my back pocket. You know, the truth is that if you really want to know what the true PCV, what the true red cell count in this horse is, go out and blow him out for a quarter mile, then take his blood, and you'll know, and you'll see 55, 56, something like that. If you get up above 66, then you get sludging of the blood, and that's the science called rheology. You don't want sludging of the blood, because then it won't go through the small capillaries. It'll plug them up, and then when you've got 220 beats a minute, it'll blow them out, and then you've got a bleeder again. You know, so it's a vicious circle. But you start with the basic fitness, the basic cardiovascular fitness. And that fitness is going to be achieved at heart rates of 180 or higher in any horse, whether it's an endurance horse or a thoroughbred or a standardbred. It would even be good for quarter horses, but you got to be careful with quarter horses not to do too much LSD or moderate work, volume of moderate work as you get closer and closer to racing, because you'll take some of that speed away from them. If the horse was really fit and really doing a lot of work and was doing a volume of race-specific work, then you could afford to do more cardiovascular development on them. But hey, these guys, they go 3/4 of a mile, and that's the week sometimes. The trainer of a quarter horse, racehorse, the main thing the equipment needed is a case of beer to sit on, a BB gun to shoot the horse in the butt, and a hot walker to spin the horse around on. That's the basic tools for a quarter horse trainer that I've seen. Some of them do more. There are some guys out in Oklahoma City that were doing more. Several guys have done more, but basically the guys that do more get better racehorses. And the guys that don't do more laugh at them because they're doing all that work for nothing. But actually, they're actually building winners. But anyway, you want cardiovascular development, and that comes at a heart rate of 180 plus. The slower stuff is good for structural changes. It's, tendons, for example, respond to the number of strides as opposed to the toughness of the stride, the dynamics of concussion. You don't have to concuss a tendon to make it get stronger. All you have to do is flex it over and over and over again. And we heal bowed tendons with a muscle stimulator up here on the deep and superficial flexor muscles that causes the deep and superficial flexor tendons to contract twice a second, and they get stronger and they heal faster because of this muscle you just put it on for 4 hours a day. At the end of that 4 hours, those tendons think the horse has taken 27,000 strides. Hey, that's enough to grow new tendon quickly. And we have, freshly bowed horses racing in 5 months, racing full blast with brand new tendons. Nobody believes it, but that's what we're doing. And it's been done 400 times, something like that. So the LSD is really good for soft tissue development. If you can go up and punch a horse in the shoulder and it's hard as a rock, that's the muscle fascia. That's the bag that encapsulates the muscle. And that fascia is made of the same kind of fiber, collagen fiber, that the tendons and ligaments are made of. And it's kind of a good indication. If you've got a lot of miles on a horse, he's going to have a solid steel shoulder muscle, and that's an indicator that the tendons and ligaments are also that tough. When I go up to a thoroughbred and I want to just see what level of fitness he's in, all I got to do is go up and grab that shoulder muscle, and I can find out right away what kind of miles this horse has been doing. If he hadn't been doing any miles, that's going to be flab. So it's a real good thing to do, LSD. You'll get the structure done. Bone requires a little bit more than that. Bone will require some concussive and bending forces. So gradually, as you come to speed and go faster and faster, bone will respond to those faster and faster workouts by remodeling and accommodating that extra concussion. So first thing you're working on is tendons and ligaments, and you can work on those with weanlings. Put them on a high-speed treadmill. You can build strong tendons and ligaments and collagen pads on babies on a treadmill. We've done it. And you can also build strong bones that way too, as you increase the speed on the treadmill or out, with a pony horse out in the field. So you can do that. Now, let's talk about heart rate recoveries, because really, unless you're working with endurance horses, the working heart rate is not the key ingredient. Basically, in a racehorse, you want that heart rate to be able to rev and then drop back down. And if it goes to 240, you're happy, just as happy as if it went to 216, okay? What counts, though, is the recovery heart rate, because that tells you how deep you dug into the horse. Now, the recovery heart rate is interesting. You go, let's say you're sailing across the finish line and your heart rate's 216. Then you slow the horse down to eventually a walk, and you went about another quarter mile to do that. Now you're walking, and you've turned and you're walking the other way. And the heart rate's dropping. It's down to 190, 180, 170, 160, 140, 130, 132, 130, 132, 131, 130. That's a plateau. And that plateau is going to happen about 60 to 90 seconds after crossing the finish line at a walk. The horse's heart rate is going to come down and flatten out and then drop on down some more, but more slowly. That plateau is, for all horses, whether it's an endurance horse or a thoroughbred or whatever, that plateau is what I'm calling the recovery heart rate. Now, the recovery heart rate tells how far you have just dug into that horse. If that recovery heart rate is below 110, you got almost no anaerobic work done. You got almost no cardiovascular work done at all. If it's below 100, you got zero done. You just went out and did some miles. So below 110, you're not getting much done. Between 110 and 125, though, is your working range for cardiovascular development and for, because of the speed you're making, for neuromuscular coordination, for your specific event. So that's money in the bank. Between 110 and 125, that's money in the bank. And as you go through your progression of workouts, you'll be working your way up from finishing a workout at 110 heart rate plateau to 115 heart rate plateau to 118 heart rate plateau, etc. as you go along. In other words, you're not guiding your workouts by your heart rates at all. You're looking at time for distance, and you're bringing that time for distance down slice by slice by slice. In doing so, your recovery heart rates will gradually climb. Now, if you stayed right at the same place, then your recovery heart rates would drop because the horse would be getting fitter. But you're not staying in the same place. You're coming down slowly but surely. You're moving in a progressively loaded manner. You're moving down toward racing speeds. As you do so, your recovery heart rates get higher and higher and higher as you go through that process. Between 125 and 135 is the yellow light. It says you dug pretty damn deep with this last heat. Now, if you're just doing a single, no problem. Bring them back to the barn, run them down, and bring them back to the barn, and call it a day. And you can come back next week and do probably just a little bit more than you did today. In terms of speed or in terms of distance, because that's what you've done. You've super compensated the horse. You've built him to a higher level of capability than he was before you did the workout. That's the whole purpose of the workout. And you got into that good range. You got into that 125 where you know you did some good. If you recovered at 110, that's like training a horse in 215. It's got to race in 2 minutes. It's not training. It's not moving forward. At 135, though, you're liable to have done some damage. You're liable to have banged into some fatigue. And so then, once you do that, you watch that horse real carefully for the next 2 or 3 days. Minor injuries take about 3 days to show up. Big injuries happen right in front of your eyes. You can see that tendon going, but minor injuries, that same tendon will pop out a little bit in about 3 days, and it's still a bow. No way around it. It can be either real big today and it's a bow, or it can be a little thing 3 days later and it's still a bow. You've got to treat it like it is. So 135 recovery heart rate is a worrisome place to be. And if you're monitoring, then you know how close you're getting to that. You know, workout by workout, you know that, well, I don't know. I don't know if this guy can do that kind of work this coming week.